Unpacking the Experience with a quick question and answer with Cortez to kind of hear his different insights and stories about the Father McKenna Center. So Cortez, our first question for you is just in general to tell us about the Father McKenna Center and what are the different types of programs and the population that you serve?
Well, I think the best way to answer this is to tell you how we would normally operate and then tell you how we are forced to operate now. Incidentally, we just had about $4 million worth of work done on the center. And a month later after we reopened, COVID hit, March 17th. So March 17th, COVID hit, and we really have not gotten to use the facilities like they were intended. So we're doing the best we can right now. But normally what happens is we serve approximately 100 to 150 men on a daily basis. Of course, that's under normal circumstances. They come in, they sign in the morning at 7. They come and have a seat in our sanctuary where they're exposed to, they can sit down and watch the news, TV or whatever, just kind of get settled for the morning and have a chance to just kind of think a little bit. One thing we're big on here is just having guys feel comfortable with the environment they're in. And so it's a big deal around here to treat these guys with dignity and respect. So we have them come in and sign in, have a seat. We feed them breakfast. We offer them a shower. In the meantime, we do case management with them. Right now it's myself. I have another full-time case manager that works here. My title is Director of Services. I also do case management here and a lot of other things. So we primarily try to invite those guys in and have them know that they are now in an environment that cares about them and is willing to help them move their lives along. I don't think when a guy shows up here, the crowd that we work with or the population that we serve are guys who really are probably right at the bottom of their existence, if you know what I mean. They are just, they come in here usually pretty hopeless and pretty depressed and just about ready to give up. And they start to feel invisible. And so right away, we try to make them feel like they're in an environment that really not only cares about them, but we expect them to take advantage of what's being offered to them. So we have a full-time case management program. And the thing about our case management is we don't put spans of time or perimeters on people because everybody's ceiling's different. We work with the person according to what that individual might need. And in that way, it's important that we're not connected to the government, so we don't have all these regulations we have to adhere to. We can kind of just do what we think we instinctually need to do with whatever person comes through that door. In addition to a daytime program, and throughout that day, we have a very, very close friend of ours who has her own program who does a peace circle. So she comes down and does peace circle here twice a week. We have a 11 o'clock general meeting every day, and that's where I guess I would call the 11 o'clock meeting part sermon, part informational, sit down, part confessional, part recovery meeting. It's a lot of things. It's whatever it needs to be on that day. And we start the day by reciting an affirmation, at which at some point we'll probably expose you to. And that affirmation, it sets the tone for the day and kind of creates a frame of mind that we need the men to be in order to be able to help them. But initially, they're just invited in, we let them know we welcome them, we feed them, and then we kind of, we tend to those things that need immediate care, such as letting the guy get a shower, letting him get some clean clothing, let him feel a little better, get him some food in his stomach, and let him feel a little better about himself. And then we sit down, and when we do an initial with the guy, either Michael, who is the case manager that works for me, or myself will sit down with them, and we do what is called intake. And during that intake session, we want the guys to be honest with us, no matter what that honesty is. It's very important that they're willing to be honest with us, not only honest, but transparent if they're willing to. We need for them to empower us with as much information as they can give us, so that we can take that information and figure out what the next step is for him. We kind of act like a triage at first. The triage does in a hospital. When a person first comes in, they kind of assess what's going on with them, and then they send them in the right direction based off what they find out. And that's kind of what we do with guys here. Once we get an idea of what his next steps need to be, we sit down and talk to him about My Better Life Pyramid, which is a guide that guys use to progress through the program. Most guys come here, they don't have IDs and stuff like that. So we introduce them to that, and then we simply wait to see if he comes back, to see if he's willing to take on the commitment of bettering himself. But we let them know right away that that's our expectation. We don't want to get into this dynamic with these guys where we're just giving them handouts on a daily basis and there's no progress being made. That's not our objective here. We're not trying to sustain these men. We are trying to help these men improve the condition of their lives. And so in order to do that, you have to be willing to make that journey with that person. There's quite a bit of behavioral adjustment that needs to take place, because homelessness is a culture unto itself. You kind of have to reintroduce people as to how we do things, or those who quote unquote think we're living normally how we live. If they're going to be successful out in society, then they must start to try to learn how to operate to be successful in society. So that's what is important to us. I am mourning the loss right now of our hypothermia transition program. That's a program that starts November 1st every year, and it lasts till April 1st. And the idea is to have guys, a selected number of 20 guys that we believe that have really bought into the program, that are really willing to roll their sleeves up and get to work. We believe that, and we hire a case manager just for that group of guys, and they stay here 24/7. And we feed them meals, everything. We're partners with the Gonzaga Mothers Club, which is the high school adjacent to us here. They bring in the meals. And so we work with those guys on a daily basis, and it's pretty intense. And the whole idea is in that 5-month period, if a guy really zeroes in on his life, the goal is to have him in his own dwelling with a way to support himself. And we have about a 76% success rate in that program. So I'm very proud of that. At the end of that 5-month period, 16, 17 of those guys are working and are living in a better situation, and a lot of the time living independently. So that's our goal here.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. It sounds like you have a very incredible organization that is helping a lot of people. I know you mentioned the pyramid and the affirmation. Amy has it on her computer. I know she tried to share screen. Technology is difficult sometimes. So maybe sometime throughout the Zoom, we can try to get that up. Let's see.
Well, there's the pyramid right there. It starts at the bottom. Can everybody see that? Starts at the bottom, and of course down at the bottom it says you must want it. You can't do it alone. You must build the blocks from the bottom to the top. Once built, a block needs to be maintained. So you see at the bottom, we ask the guy just to be honest, to exercise. The humility is all about exercising the right kind of attitude with us, so that helping him can be easy, and an attitude of self-awareness. In other words, we don't want a guy to come in here who is living on the street and tell us I'm great, I'm okay. No, we want you. You wouldn't be here if that was the case. So the question is are you satisfied with where you are right now? Because there's a path with you getting to a place where you are living a better quality of life. And quite a few guys buy in, some not at the beginning. Some guys just come to get something to eat and whatever we're giving out at first. But we believe exposure to that 11 o'clock meeting on a daily basis and being consistent with what we deliver to these guys and being creative about how we deliver it, eventually they will buy in and become part of this. So you see transparency there. Like I said, that's very important because we've had situations where we start to work with the guy and he gives us enough information to move forward, but at some point we run into a wall because there's something he didn't tell us about, such as a warrant or child support or one of those kind of things. And by that time we are far into the process of getting this man back up on his feet, and we may have dedicated quite a bit of resources, both financially and materially, to make that happen. And so transparency from him makes that path clearer, if you understand what I'm saying, and it makes it a whole lot easier to work with the guy, and the whole idea is to help these guys as much as you possibly can. And I think maybe the most important thing, particularly for men, we work primarily with men here, is that next line, a decision to ask for help. You cannot help someone who does not want help. You have to be willing to accept help. It's kind of like love. You ever known anybody who did not know how to accept being loved? They did not know how to process it. They did not know how to respond to it. And so it's very important that these guys get on a level where they understand that they cannot do this by themselves, and that it doesn't take anything away from you to allow someone to help you, and be willing to say when you need help or when you don't know. That's very important, and we try to teach them that that's actually a strength when you have the ability to ask for help. And then above that is what we call our legal line, and that's guys getting their documentation, making sure they are, because in Washington, D.C., it is actually illegal not to have ID. They can detain you if you don't have appropriate ID. And they can detain you because they need to determine who you are, because you're in the nation's capital. And of course, we're located right here on Capitol Hill. So, they make a big deal out of terrorism, and not sure that they shouldn't. And so, long story short, it just makes sense to follow the rules. So if it's a requirement, and then you can't get very much done in your life if you don't have identification. You can't get a job. There's so many things you can't do unless you have appropriate ID. So we want guys to have those things. We definitely want them to have health insurance, which is free in this city right now. I don't know how much longer that'll be the case. It depends. Of course, we have an election coming up, in case you guys didn't know. We don't know how much longer that will be, but in this city right now, health insurance is free. And all guys have to do is ask for it. And that enables them to move to the next line. And they need to be both physically and mentally assessed. Everybody, you, me, everybody needs to know where they are, both physically and mentally. It's very hard to move forward or to make progress if you don't have an understanding of kind of where you are, what your deficiencies are, and what needs to be fixed. So that's very important. As we move up, it's all about once you understand what your needs are, how to be efficient at identifying those resources which are most beneficial to you. And that's what we help those guys do. And it's all variable, because we don't know until a guy has a physical assessment what physical ailments he has to deal with. A lot of times these guys don't have a primary physician. They have not had a physical in a long, long time, maybe never sometimes. Going to the doctor is not something that they do. And so we just need to know where they are physically. I've known a few guys who have come through and found out they've had cancer and they've had things, and we were able to catch it in time and those kinds of things. So it's very important that guys get physically assessed, and of course, mentally assessed is just as important. About, I'd say, somewhere in the low 60s of every man that comes through here has some kind of mental health diagnosis. And it's incredible how I like one of the phrases I use is that mental illness can cause homelessness and homelessness can cause mental illness. And sometimes you don't know which is like the chicken and the egg sometimes. I've seen so many guys who, when you first meet them, they are just people who are got laid off from their job or got in a situation where they weren't able to pay their rent. They were perfectly normal, and they're not that far away from getting right back up on their feet if they were able to get re-employed, or if they could have some help with their rent or something like that. But they're not able to, and they kind of crumble under the depression of failure, and they never regain their footing from there. And the same guy, you see him 2 years later, and he's totally schizophrenic. It's amazing how that happens, how that deterioration takes place right in front of your face. I've seen it happen to so many guys. Living on the edge constantly has to tear away from a person. It has to tear at the very fiber of a person. You don't know where you're going to sleep. You don't know where you're going to put the things you have accumulated, the few things you have accumulated. You don't know if you're safe or not. You're around people who are very dangerous. That's just so much to think about for a person for a bird who does not have a nest, and it's sometimes you can see the fear in guys' eyes. It doesn't come off like that. Sometimes they come off like they're angry but I can see underneath all that. And it is not a good feeling to not have somewhere to be, somewhere that that you're safe, a safe place. And so the whole idea with this pyramid, and I won't go all the way through it because some of it's self-explanatory and you can kind of find your way once you get started, but it's about getting the guy to the top and getting him where he's stable. The goal is for the men that come here to get stable, to get to a place where they're able to appreciate or able to take advantage of sitting in a class and paying attention and actually, actually grasping what's going on in there, or having, and you've gotten them past the anxiety and they've been treated now. They're working with a therapist. They're getting their medication. They're able to concentrate now. And so if you can get a guy to that point, for us, it's well worthwhile. We have many, many success stories with guys who stayed the course. And I have many, many frustrating stories I can tell you too about guys who don't. This is the most rewarding thing I've ever done, and it's also the most frustrating thing I've ever done. And so one of the things I tell people is I get wounded daily doing this job. You cannot, I don't care how much of a clinician you are, how much of a professional you are going to get attached to some of these people. You just cannot help it. And I would like to think I'm really good at, the ladies who have been around me, they'll tell you I'm kind of grumpy and kind of distant, and I play a good game. I do what I have to do, but inside I'm melting. My heart is bleeding for these guys. I'm trying to give them what they need. It doesn't do them any good for me to give them what they want. It's almost like raising children. My boss, the president here, she said, God, if I'd only come here before I had my kids, I would have been much better at it, because the whole idea here is that we're willing to do the tough stuff, the stuff that guys really resist, the stuff that makes guys angry at you at first. Say, all my guys, they hate me at first because I represent to them possibly changing everything that they've done, what has become normal to them in everyday life. I'm telling them you shouldn't do things that way, or you should do things differently. That's hard to accept. And so everybody doesn't take that just, oh, great, okay, we'll do what you say. It takes a while for a guy to do that. He has to buy in on some level. A lot of this is about building the trust with an individual so that he will buy what you're selling. Because what we're selling these guys is that although you have gotten no in every way you turn, and it seems to you that life is just dealt you all the bad cards, you are suggesting to me that there is this life that I can pursue that's nothing like this. You got to be kidding me. That's hard to sell a guy who's 45 years old, who left school when he was in the 10th grade. And you telling him that the quality of his life can get to a place that you're suggesting. That's not an easy sell. And so most of these guys don't have a background, or they're not able to recall a time in their life when they can point to someone they knew, or even in their own household, where they saw successful people living in a structured environment, going to work. You know what I'm saying? They don't have that reference point. And so what you suggesting them sounds like TV or something. They just are you talking about everyday life. My life's very different from that. People like myself, and I think we'll get to a part where I tell you about how I got here, what made me do what I do, and everything. But I'll give you just a glimpse of that. I didn't grow up like the average guy that comes here. I grew up like a lot of you. My dad was an Army officer. My mother was an executive at Corning. And so I grew up an upper middle class black kid in Southwest Virginia in the Blue Ridge Mountains, which wasn't that common then, especially if you were biracial like me. My mother was Spanish. And so I grew up in a little town in the Blue Ridge Mountains. It's like Friday Night Lights there. It was all about football. The town closed on Friday. It was all about football. And I was a football star, okay? I was the fastest human being in the vicinity then. And so I was an absolute football star. I got injured really, really bad. I lived 6 miles from Virginia Tech. I grew up 6 miles from Virginia Tech. And at the time, Frank Beamer was playing for Virginia Tech. He ended up being the coach and all that. But, and this guy named, came to watch me play. I played against actually one of the Tech coach's kids. He went to Blacksburg High School, da, 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 da. Anyway, they were interested in me coming to Virginia Tech, and, you know, my dad thought I was going to be this big football star, and I got injured. I have an artificial hip now. And back in those days when I first got injured, they didn't have artificial things. They drilled holes in my hip. All kinds of things have been done to my hip. If you looked at it, you say, oh my God. But anyway, I was an athlete who could not accept that I couldn't be a star anymore. And that's what eventually got me to where I ended up homeless. But it's a whole lot of stuff in between, but that's kind of how it started out. The point I'm trying to make to you is I had a reference point. When I did become homeless, it never was something that I thought, well, I'm homeless, there's nothing I can do about it. It was never acceptable for me because I had seen something different, right? I grew up around successful people who were in a very sound household, and we kind of were living the American dream. I crumbled under the failure of not being able to succeed at something that I had become obsessed with, okay? So when I'm talking to kids, one of the things that I said when they are in their late teens or early 20s, one thing I say to them is, if you're in trouble, say it. You know, everybody's good. I'm good. Everybody's good. No, everybody's not good. Okay. And if I had just one time, instead of saying I'm good, saying, you know what, I feel like killing myself, just once, then it would have probably not led to a whole lot of things that occurred in my life. So I would be remiss if I didn't say that every time I talk to any young folks, I tell you, you don't have to be good all the time. And when you're not, then you need to tell those you trust and that you can confide in what's going on, that you don't feel like yourself, or you're feeling some kind of way, and allow them to help you. Don't ever forget that, young folks. But so where was I? Let me ask you questions.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing the stories of the people you serve, and also just a little bit about your personal life. Yeah, we deeply appreciate kind of hearing the perspectives and the day-to-day things that you do at the McKenna Center. Also, thank you for sharing the pyramid. And you also share with us a video that Amy is going to have set up. And the video is called What is in Your Cart? So we're going to watch the video, and Cortez, you can add anything that you want to it, and then we'll go into an interactive activity where we will break you into different rooms, and I'll explain that after the video.
Okay.
Let us know if it's good and working, everyone. Amy, I don't know if we can hear it. Can someone give a thumbs down if you can't hear it either?
Amy, if you take out your headphones, we might be able to hear the sound.
Can any of you hear it?
Sorry, friends. I actually am not using my headphones right now. So I don't know. And I thought I selected that when I shared my screen, it would share the computer audio, but I'm going to try one more time because it's short. So I am going to try one more time to do this. Let's try it.
What would it feel like to carry everything you own with you at all times? We often see people who are homeless with a grocery cart, and things that are placed in their cart helps them connect with their true selves. What would you put in your cart? What matters most to you? What helps you connect with your true self?
So we wanted to share that short little video to kind of get conversation started in your breakout rooms. So with the questions posed in the video, and just to prompt you, we're going to move you into breakout rooms, and you're going to introduce yourselves to each other, get to know each other, and then kind of reflect on the video, the narration and what the questions he was asking, and then have a note taker where you're going to take a piece of paper, or even in the notes section of your phone, you're going to make a little shopping cart. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. You can just write down a little bulleted list, and with the people in your group, kind of talk about what tangible and intangible things are most important to you, and make a collective list of different things that you would have in your cart. It can be anything you want it to be. Cortez, do you have anything to add for them to reflect about?
No, that sounds like A handful.
Awesome. So Amy will create the breakout rooms. And once you're done, we'll come back to the big group and kind of report what you all decided to put in your carts.
So can you hear me?
I can. Hold on one second.